Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Swallowed Star 2 episode number 51 based on novel. So let's start. Dichu said, after becoming a guest official of my Dichu lineage, I will give you a guest official token, a cave, and 10 followers. This cave is also in the capital of Chu and is of great value. Luo Feng nodded. Chudu is the core of the Emperor Chu lineage. Looking at the entire origin continent, there are only a handful of cities more prosperous than it. The price of a large cave here is probably more expensive than the Chaos Zone A in Huyang City combined. I know you don't care about these. Dichu said with a smile, what you care about is inheritance and resources. What we, the idle practitioners, lack is inheritance and resources, Luo Feng said. Dichu said, Brother Luo, he was able to cultivate to the peak level of chaos, so he should have 1 or 2 divine king level inheritances that are suitable for him. However, in my Yangfeng ancient country, there is the best inheritance in the entire origin continent, and there is also the inheritance that is most suitable for you. I believe that if you get a more suitable inheritance, Brother Luo, his strength will be able to improve further. Dichu also felt a little hot in his heart. If Brother Luo he can go one step further, not to reach the God King level, but to reach the level of transcendence of Chaos Realm, it will be of great help to him. I'm looking forward to it too. Luo Feng said. The outside world believes that he is at the peak of the Chaos Realm and that he should have 1 or 2 suitable God King level inheritances. But in fact, he was even poorer than the outside world guessed. He didn't even have a suitable God King level inheritance. The legend art could be said to be beyond the God King level, but it was not an inheritance of the Great Tao's cultivation, but a secret art of will. What he needed now was the inheritance of the cultivation of the Great Tao of origin. He was in urgent need of the Great Tao of life and the Great Tao of destruction. When we return to the Marquis mansion, I will immediately send Brother Luo he to choose inheritance resources. Dichu said, each guest official has a free exchange quota of 100,000 merits. This is also a gift from the Dichu lineage to the guest official. As for more inheritance and resources, the guest official needs to make merits. The greater the merits, the more resources can be exchanged. It is the most core and top inheritance of my Dichu lineage. As long as you have enough merits, you can exchange it for it. Ancestor Yangfeng is also very kind to guests. Dichu said. Luo Feng had known this for a long time. All other forces in the entire origin continent will be integrated into the 2 major camps of the Flame Wind Ancient Country and the Thunder Ancient Country. It is also because these 2 camps have indeed opened up the most precious inheritance. It's just that the credit required will be very high. Don't worry, I will arrange some tasks for Brother Luo he that are easy to gain credit for. Dichu said with a smile, the arrangement of many tasks for the Dichu lineage is mainly decided by the first-class marquises. Then I'll trouble you, Brother Chu. Luo Feng said. Dichu was still in a good mood. The competition among the first-class dukes is fierce, and they can't get many good tasks each. Generally, they can only focus on cultivating 1 or 2 guests from the Chaos Realm. It would be terrible if the guest chosen is an ungrateful person. Dichu observed Luo Feng for a long time when he was in Huyang City, and only after determining Luo Feng's temperament did he decide to invest heavily. Boom! The warships of the Royal Guards surrounded the large ship of Marquis Chu and headed towards the Marquis mansion together. At this moment, on the top floor of a towering building in the capital of Chu, there were 2 figures sitting opposite each other. A Bohemian man sat by the railing, holding a wine jug and glancing into the distance. His eyes penetrated the space barrier and looked at the big ship of Chuyuho. The newly promoted Chuyuho has returned to Chudu. Chuyuho, a handsome man with 3 eyes, also looked in that direction. Chuyuho, who possesses an infinite divine body, has become a first-class marquis as soon as he breaks through to the Chaos Realm. Yes, another infinite divine body. The Bohemian man shook his head and said, 5 of the 7 first-class dukes are infinite divine bodies. But I am not an infinite divine body. Brother Chu Feng has an ordinary divine body, but he can reach the peak level of chaos, which is even more amazing. The handsome three-eyed man, said the unruly man, who was Marquis Chufeng, one of the 7 first-class marquises of the Emperor Chu lineage. Stop praising me. Chufeng, who drank his wine and sighed, I have cultivated for a long time, but it is difficult to make further progress. Whether it is the Chaos Realm Transcendent level or the Divine King level, it is very far away for me. The resources given by the ancestors are only so many. Before, 6 first-class marquises were fighting for it. Now it has become 7 first-class marquises. Chu Yuho has just made a breakthrough, and his strength and foundation are average. He should not be able to compete with you, Brother Chufeng, in the early stages, said the handsome three-eyed man. He has an assistant named Luo He, who is at the peak of chaos. Chufeng, who narrowed his eyes, even in the early stages, he will fight with me. As a newly promoted Marquis, you don't need to perform any tasks in the first 30 centuries. The handsome three-eyed man hesitated. This is also a way for the Emperor to protect the newly promoted Marquis. There is nothing we can do. Chufeng, who put down the wine pot and said, let's not talk about him. By the way, when will Lord Yuan Xiu come to Chudu? Senior brother Yuan Xiu said that he would come to Chu City to visit the God King. No one can tell when he will come, said the handsome three-eyed man. Once you know he is coming to Chudu, you must tell me immediately, said Chufeng, who. The handsome three-eyed man nodded. In the lineage of Emperor Chu, including the royal family in Chaos Realm, the Emperor's disciples, the Chaos Realm guests, the idle Chaos Realm, there are only 2 people who have reached the transcendent level of Chaos Realm. Their status is comparable to that of those who have just entered the level of God King. The Lord of Yuanxiu Palace is a transcendent being in the Chaos Realm. He has cultivated a prison in his own divine body, named Dark Palace. In a single thought, he can imprison the endless and vast world around him in the prison in his body. Naturally, he can also trap the enemy in the prison. Even for the ancient God King, trapped in the prison within his body, it would take some time for him to get out. With this method, beings who have just entered the level of God King are quite afraid of him. Chuyuhu Mansion, as a first-class mansion, is about 1 billion kilometers long and wide. Many clans, personal guards, and a large number of servants of the Chu Yuho lineage moved in. The lineage of Emperor Chu had been multiplying for endless years, and its number had long been very large, and many royal clans even lived in poverty. Those who can truly live a luxurious life and have abundant resources are all high-ranking members of the royal family. Chu Yu, there are many people in the clan who want to meet you. The graceful woman whispered, do you want to meet them? Let's wait until the evening to host a banquet and have a feast together. Di Chuyu said, Brother Luo He and I have important matters to attend to. Di Chuyu took Luo Feng away and left. Luo Feng could only smile apologetically. Mother. The eldest son watched his father and Luo He great sage leave, and then he couldn't help but say, Father just came back, and many elders from our royal family and Fenya clan came to see him, but father was so neglectful. Shut up. The graceful woman glanced at her eldest son coldly and said, You idiot, the matter between your father and the great sage Luo He is the most important matter in our mansion. Oh. The eldest son responded. The second and third sons did not say a word. The main reason is that the mother dotes on the eldest child the most, so the eldest child is sometimes more unscrupulous, while the second and third children are much more cautious. The first guest official selected by my mansion turned out to be this unknown Law, her great sage. The graceful woman frowned slightly. My father is at the peak of the Chaos Realm and is the Lord of Fingya City, but he didn't invite my father. When she was outside the city to greet them, she was secretly annoyed when she saw the black-clad man, Law Hadarshan, coming side by side with her husband. In her opinion, it would be perfect for her husband and her father, City Lord Fengye, to join forces. But her husband had already chosen, without consulting her, that only those who had cultivated to the level of eternal true God would be qualified to lead the small universe, including their descendants. Chu Yuho sighed, those who could become eternal true gods in such a harsh environment would be reused after they came out. Luo Feng could only sigh that this ancestor was very cruel to the descendants of the royal family. How could these youngsters know how horrible it is for countless descendants to consume resources? Any movement in the Emperor Chu Palace could not be hidden from the ancient existence deep in the palace. He opened his eyes at this moment and looked at Emperor Chuyu and Luo Feng. The best way is to throw 99% of the tribe into the small universe. Emperor Chu thought. This was the first thing Emperor Xian did among the 13 emperors of the Yangfeng ancient country, and soon the other 12 emperors followed suit. Throwing them into a small universe can save a lot of resources and reduce the pressure on the emperors. Secondly, it can also put enough pressure on the royal family so that they dare not slack off. The ancient emperor simply glanced at Di Chuyu and Luo Feng, then closed his eyes and ignored them. The Di Chu palace was vast and mysterious, like a maze of time and space. Luo Feng arrived in front of a palace under the guidance of Di Chuyu. Next time, just follow the same route and come to this inheritance hall. Di Chuyu said, don't go to other places. Once you get lost, you might end up in some forbidden areas. I understand. Luo Feng was not interested in the secrets within the Di Chu palace. He only cared about inheritance and resources. Luo Feng looked at the hall in front of him. The hall was simple and ancient, with 2 statues guarding the door. Come in, I'll wait for you here. Di Chuyu said. Luo Feng nodded and walked over immediately. When approaching the temple gate, the 2 statue guards turned their heads slightly and stared at Luo Feng. Luo Feng felt the terror of death looming over him. The strength of the statue guard is far greater than mine. Luo Feng was secretly shocked. Even if I have 5 transformation techniques, I feel I can't stop them. After taking a look, the 2 statue guards returned to their original state and continued to look ahead in silence. Only then did Luo Feng completely step into the inheritance hall. After Luo Feng stepped into the inheritance hall, he felt like he had entered an independent space, surrounded by chaos. Guest official from Luoha. Light and shadow condensed into an old man. He smiled at Luo Feng and said, I am the spirit of the Di Chu palace. I can help you exchange for inheritance resources. Sorry for the trouble. Luo Feng said politely. The old man said, every new guest official will have a free exchange quota of 100,000 merits. According to the rules of the Heritage Hall, the more merits a guest official has, the more inheritances and resources he can view. What inheritance and resources can I check? Luo Feng was curious. With a credit limit of 100,000, you can view all inheritances and resources with a credit limit of no more than 1 million. The old man introduced, in the future, Luoha's guest officials will have greater credits. For example, when you have 3 million credits, you can view all resources and resources with a credit limit of no more than 30 million. Luo Feng understood. Please look. The old man waved his hand, and endless chaos appeared around him. Information about inheritance appeared on the left, and dense information about resources appeared on the right. The inheritance information on the left is from high to low according to the required exchange merit. The resource information on the right is also arranged from high to low according to the redemption merit. Luo he guessed, you can take your time to check it out. There is no time limit. Once you make your choice, you can tell me, said the old man. Luo Feng nodded and looked at the inheritance he cared about most first. The inheritance ranked first at the highest place, the Embers of Cause and Effect, Volume 1, which requires 1 million merits to redeem. The first volume of The Embers of Cause and Effect is a lineage inheritance of the origin of cause and effect. It requires the help of the power of the primordial source outside the cage to practice, and its power far exceeds that of people at the same level. The first volume of 8 volumes of the remaining Hunyuan space formation requires 1 million merits to redeem. This is some incomplete records of an ancient formation inheritance from outside the cage. The threshold for cultivation is extremely high, and it requires extremely high understanding of the origin of space and the power of Hunyuan. The first part of Song of the Earth requires 1 million merits to redeem. You must first exchange the Hunyuan material scales of the earth before you can practice, and you must comprehend the origin of the earth. In the caged world we live in, the origin of the supreme rules does not contain the origin of the earth, so choose carefully. The first level of the Body of 3 Treasures requires 1 million merits to redeem. You need to exchange the Hunyuan material Heart of the 3 Treasures before you can proceed. You need to comprehend the origin of life, and it requires extremely high spiritual will. The introduction to each inheritance is very detailed, such as the exchange price of the required Hunyuan materials, which branch of the origin avenue the practice corresponds to, the intensity of the mental will required, the requirements for the practice environment, and the requirements for auxiliary materials. There are some descriptions to allow redeemers to choose carefully. In the ancient country of Yangfeng, it is obvious that this kind of inheritance that can use the power of Hunyuan for cultivation, or the inheritance that uses Hunyuan materials for cultivation, is extremely powerful, and the merit required for exchange is also extremely high. Luo Feng saw it. These inheritances, even at the initial stage, can enable one to transcend the chaos realm. If he reaches the level of God King, he will be able to look down on his peers at the same level, and his methods will be strange and unpredictable. After all, normal God King level methods use the normal power in the cage world, while these methods use the power and materials of Hunyuan. Whether it is the origin continent or the 3,000-dimensional original universe around the origin continent, they all operate according to the supreme rules. Luo Feng understood after watching these detailed introductions, this complete and huge world governed by the supreme rules is like a cage. The power flowing in the wider area outside the cage is the power of the chaotic origin. The power of Hunyuan is a more mysterious force. The chaos realm can only be utilized with the help of special methods. No wonder the outside world is speculating that the two ancestors of the Flame Wind Ancient Country and the Thunder Ancient Country may be the ones who can break the cage. Luo Feng thought, seeing these inheritances and resources, everyone would speculate so. However, the two ancient countries have never acknowledged this. Those Hunyuan materials are also very expensive. Luo Feng looked at the resources on the other side. The first one is called Hunyuan Crystal, and it requires 1 million merits to redeem it. Hunyuan Crystal contains the pure Hunyuan power. The second one is to face the avenue of the origin of time, for an epoch of time, which requires 900,000 merits to redeem. Ranked third are the other 8 origin avenues within the supreme rules. It takes only 800,000 merits to redeem the complete origin avenue for an era. Here at Yangfeng Ancestor, are there ways for the younger generations to face the 9 origins of the supreme rules? Luo Feng sighed. Of course, 1 century would require 8 or 900,000 merits. But he could face the origin of life forever, so he did have a big advantage in this regard. Fourth place, the complete corpse of the blood beetle, which requires 800,000 merits to redeem. The fifth one is a sword, a God King level weapon, which requires 800,000 merits to redeem. The sixth one is the shadowless treasure medicine. After taking this medicine, one can become the darling of the infinite origin avenue. The duration of the medicine effect is related to the strength of the soul. 800,000 merits are required to redeem it. Seventh place, the exchange of Hunyuan material 3 treasures heart requires 800,000 merits. Luo Feng looked at it carefully. Although he only had 100,000 merits and could not afford to exchange for those with higher merits, the numerous inheritances and resources also broadened Luo Feng's horizons. He had a clearer understanding of the strength of some ancient god kings and chaos realm transcendent beings. The ancient country of Yangfeng did it on purpose, allowing any new guest official to see these things. This will make the guests work harder to accumulate merits. Luo Feng sighed secretly. Luo Feng looked at the large amount of inheritance and information slowly. As the required merits get lower and lower, inheritance and resources slowly become normal. This lowest ranked inheritance is destined to be with me. Luo Feng saw at a glance that the last ranked inheritance was called Heart Shadow Art, the God King level inheritance and the most core inheritance of the Heart Shadow sect. Being included in the collection of the ancient country of Yangfeng means that it is indeed excellent. According to the detailed introduction, Heart Shadow Art has some outstanding features in terms of life-saving, which is why it is qualified to be included. Ordinary God King level inheritances are all worth 10,000 merits. Luo Feng looked at it and saw that there were quite a few inheritances priced at 10,000 merits. They were all inheritances with some shining points. I need to check the inheritance of the life spiritual lineage, and the inheritance of the destruction/lineage. Luo Feng looked for what he needed and began to study. There are 9 kinds of God King level inheritances in the spiritual lineage of life. The minimum is 10,000 merits and the maximum is 100,000 merits. The inheritance of a branch of the avenue of life? It actually requires 100,000 merits. Luo Feng checked. The first calamity of the 8 tribulations life form requires 100,000 merits to redeem. The first calamity requires practicing the 3 meridians of life: spirit, source of life, and body of life, respectively. Only after all 3 meridians are perfected can the first calamity practice be carried out. The practice is extremely difficult. Once the first calamity of the 8 tribulations life form is achieved, every bit of one's own strength contains consciousness and one can easily split into clones. Oneself is like a huge world, with infinite power and cannot be shaken. And the vitality is endless. Luo Feng looked at the detailed introduction. A clone? Endless vitality? A divine body that is as unshakable as the world? The clone alone attracted Luo Feng. Among the ancient god kings, only a few have clones. The inheritance that can cultivate a clone is extremely rare. According to the introduction, as long as you reach the first calamity, your strength in head-on combat will be slightly stronger than those at the same level. But your ability to preserve your life is more terrifying than many god kings at the second level. Luo Feng was secretly shocked. He read a lot of introductions to inheritance and gained some understanding of the cultivation at the god king level. According to the realm, the god king can be divided into 3 realms. The first entering god king level and ordinary god kings are all in the first realm. The vast majority of the ancient god kings on this origin continent are still in the first realm of god king. Being a god king of the first level doesn't mean you are weak. It depends on what path and method you are practicing. For example, once you have mastered the first calamity of the 8 tribulations life form, you will have clones, and one clone is harder to kill than many god kings of the second level. Of course, other roads have their own advantages. This is the advantage of the great Tao of the origin of life. Of course, this 8 tribulations life form method is very powerful. Ling Feng looked at the introduction, although it does not use the power of the Hunyuan and the Hunyuan materials. But it is very difficult to practice. If one of the other methods is perfected, one will become a divine king. For this method, one must complete the 3 meridians before proceeding to the final practice of the first calamity. Only if one succeeds can one be considered to have completed the first calamity. No wonder, the ancestor of the snow realm has never been able to die. Luo Feng looked at the method of life. The ancestor of the snow realm might have learned some very powerful inheritance of the origin of life, so it became very difficult to kill him. This is only the first tribulation, and there will be the second and third tribulations to follow. Moreover, the realm of the creator of this inheritance must be extremely high. With his insight and knowledge, this inheritance must have an extremely solid foundation. Luo Feng felt just by looking at the introduction that they were both inheritances of the first level of the Supreme Divine King. The first tribulation of 8 tribulations life form was countless times stronger than the Heart Shadow Art. Within the range of 100,000 merits, the first calamity of the 8 tribulations life form is the best spiritual method of life that I can exchange for. The only flaw is that its combat effectiveness is somewhat inferior. Luo Feng said secretly. After cultivating all 3 meridians of the avenue of life and achieving perfection and attaining the first calamity, he is only slightly stronger than the first level of an ordinary god king. If one is only practicing one lineage, the avenue of life, the combat effectiveness is generally weaker than other avenues. The avenue of destruction is indeed very destructive. Luo Feng was also watching some inheritances of the avenue of destruction. In the ancient country of Yangfeng, the path of destruction is called the heaven-splitting path, which is intended to split the entire cage of heaven and earth. The inheritance of the splitting heaven lineage. From low to high, even if one uses the splitting heaven vein to enter the God King level with the cheaper merit of 10 or 20,000, they cannot split the cage of heaven and earth. This 72 cutting swords. Luo Feng's eyes lit up when he saw it. This was a sword technique that really attracted him. The first volume of 72 Swords of Destruction requires 90,000 merits to redeem. This video will end here.